Candidates is over and the World Championship challenger is decided. And the winner is Nepomniachtchi. But I think the best game of the tournament goes to Anish Giri for his fabulous win against Fabiano Caruana with the black pieces in round number 12. This is the guide to win world number 2s. Let's start. Game started off with e4, c5, knight f3, e6, d4, cd4, knight d4, knight f6, knight c3, knight c6, and a3. I think it's amusing that Caruana tries to deviate from the main theoretical lines as quick as he can. But ironically, he played a fantastic game against MVL in round 8 in a deep, complex theoretical line which he had prepared and which he had won in the end. Here, normally the move played is knight db5, where after d6, bishop f4, e5, bishop g5, and this is the main line Sveshnikov. But Caruana decided to play a3, whereafter Giri responded with bishop to e7. Giri decides to switch it to a Scheveningen. But I think the most principled continuation to White's disoriented development was to play d5, which would likely lead to an isolated queen's pawn after bishop to b5, bishop d7, ed5, ed5, castle, bishop e7, rook e1, and castle. Where, though black does have an isolated pawn, black has quite a lot of activity, as now queen b6, bishop c5 could be threatened, attacking f2. This bishop could run to g4, attacking the queen, and black's development is coming in easily. On the other hand, it's quite hard to figure out what White's plan is going to be. Where is this bishop going to be? Is it on g5, e3, or f4? So overall, this looks equal with both chances for both sides, but I would prefer black there. Bishop e7 was played. Bishop to e2 could have been an option, but he played bishop e3. Castle, bishop e2, and it of course transposed. d6. And now black also wants to keep things as complex as possible, because something like d5 could be met by ed5, knight d5, knight d5, queen d5, castle, knight d4, queen d4, queen d4, bishop d4 in a boring endgame which would most likely end in a draw. So Giri decides that he wants to play d6 and he wants to play the game. And now queen to d3, the novelty by Caruana. And for the time being, White does not want to choose a side. Which way should he castle? Short or long? And is ready for both sides depending on the situation. If black decides that he wants to play something like h5, which I know he wouldn't, but if he does, then of course White will not castle short, he'll just castle long and then start pushing the pawns on the king side. Bishop d7 and f4. What's the idea? Well, simply g4, g5. And now, for now, the time being, White's idea is to play long castle, but again, he can switch anytime he wants. So that's the point of queen d3, having both sides possible. e5. When the opponent is trying to attack on a flank, strike out in the center. e5, knight takes e6, b takes e6, and castle. And as strange as it sounds, this obvious move might not be the optimal move, because here the best move actually is rook to f1. This is actually very flexible and might have promised White more chances for a win. The idea is to long castle, but delaying castling as much as he can, because sometimes the king will be better in the center as it will be protected by these three pieces. On the other hand, on long castling, black does have the open b file. For example, if he tries he takes f4, bishop takes f4, queen to b6, attacking b2, long castle, And maybe Caruana saw this and then thought that rook a b8 and kind of black has got the attack. But after b3 and the machine, the engine stockfish is claiming that white should be good here. Because white has the f file to attack on and white has a smoother attack coming with g4, g5. Yet, Caruana played castle, which seems the most obvious move, and now e takes f4. Whenever you push e6 to e5 in the Scheveningen, you do want to swap this pawn. And then the next idea would be to play d5 soon. Bishop takes f4, and bishop to e6 was played. But Giri, in his post-game conference, also said that he was thinking of bishop to g4, and black wants to trade the other bishop, but after something like rook a d1, bishop e2, queen takes e2 or knight takes e2, almost the same, and d5 now, e d5, queen d5, and this would have given equal chances, most likely ending in a draw again, like queen d5, knight d5, something like knight d4, white is trying to attack the c6 pawn. On the other hand, simply bishop c5, pinning the knight, king h1, knight f4, rook f4, bishop d4, rook d4, and this should be drawn roughly. And another important note to consider is why not queen b6? King h1, queen takes b2. Well, sadly rook at b1 and the queen is trapped. Not what we want to. So bishop e6, the most logical, it would seem. Queen g3. And now a question for you. Black to play. And how should he respond? I mean, white is trying to attack, so how should he respond to this threat? Here, responding to this threat is simply met by knight d7. Why? Well, this is a nice maneuver because the black knight belongs to e5, not on f6. Now, ideas with f5 is also possible, where the rook will be coming to f7, defending this g7 pawn. Something like bishop h6 is not possible here because of bishop f6 simply. And now bishop queen b6 check is another threat. Something like king h1 can be met by rook b8. And this bishop on h6, even though it may seem it's quite active, is not really doing anything right now. If something like king h1 is played, now black can simply play knight to b5. Because bishop e5, d e5, and queen e5 is not possible because of bishop to d6. And also bishop f6. Both promise black good compensation for the pawn. As this bishop is activated now and is attacking c3. If the bishop came to d6, then it's attacking h2. But either ways, it's good for black. Picking up the pawn is not great because now queen b6 check, king h1, bishop d6, queen d6, and now queen takes b2 is possible because rook at b1, queen takes c3, and this knight is undefended. So Fabi rightfully played rook a d1, just developing his rook to a better square. Rook to e8, again getting the rook away. This is important because if queen to b8, then simply bishop h6, bishop f6, and rook takes f6. And suddenly, queen takes g7 is almost unstoppable. So that's why the queen is needed on d8 so that it is defending this bishop on f6. Rook e8 was played. Again, if bishop takes d6, then again check, king h1, take, and queen takes d6, queen takes b2, and there is no trapping the queen again. King h1. Now the idea is to play bishop take d6. And now a very nice move, queen to b8. Defending it and also not moving the knight away because we don't know where the knight is going to go. Is this knight wanting to go to c5 or e5 or maybe coming back to f6? So instead of deciding where he wants to go, Giri simply plays queen b8, defending the b8 pawn, attacking b2. Smart move, I would say. And b4. This is a very ambitious move. Caruana wants to play b5 next, followed by knight d5, and the knight is coming to d5. Here, b3 would have been slightly more better, and the idea is to maneuver the knight to f6, f5. And how can that be done? Well, let's say knight e5, something like bishop to h5, g6, knight to e2, and now simply knight is coming to d4, where it's a better square for the knight than on c3. But b4 was played, white wants the knight on d5. Nevertheless, knight to b5, b5. And now rook to c8. And this may seem that black is playing so passively, like the rook on a8 is not doing anything, the queen on b8 and the rook on c8 is oddly placed. But the idea behind it is that these files are going to open sometime, because either white's going to take on c6 or black's going to take on b5, and either ways the c file and the b file will be opened. And that's why once the c file and the b file is open, the queen and rook will be in ideal squares to attack the queen side pawns. b takes c6, and now you can see the queen can suddenly hop to b2 out of nowhere, attacking c3 and a3. Rook takes c6, and now this rook is also activated. Again, idea is queen b2, and simply knight d5. Here, I would say that knight b5 would be quite equal after rook takes c2, knight to d4, rook c5, and black is one pawn up, but again, white's pieces are slightly more active right now, even though black has open files, and white is threatening some ideas with bishop to h6. But knight d5. And now my second question to you, a defensive one, but black to play, and the white knight on d5 is really active. So how should he stop this? How should he stop the maneuvering of the knight? Here, you should not play bishop takes g5. And I think Fabi was hoping for that only. Where after e takes d5, rook takes c2. And this actually may even lead to win. After bishop takes e5, d takes e5, queen takes e5. It's possible. Or simply bishop d3. Something like rook c8, queen to h3, idea queen h7, g6, and now rook takes f7. King takes f7, queen takes h7, king e8, queen takes g6, king to d8, queen g8, and this is gonna be checkmate sometime. Bishop takes g6, queen c4, king d8, queen e6, and black is really helpless. And this is the problem of these three pieces. Now they're not even doing anything, because this is really not about the queen side, it's about the black king, who is very badly placed. And there is going to be an attack and most likely a checkmate. So here, that's why it's important to play queen to f8, which the Dutchman found. And Giri said in the post-game conference that probably here Fabiano realized that he is no longer playing for the advantage, because now the rook is coming to b8, the queen is helping in the defense, and now the other pieces are free to attack the queen side and just come into white's camp. c3. It's a do or die situation for Caruana, and he's ready to fight until the last pawn. Here, Giri expected c4, where after knight c4, bishop c4, rook c4, knight e7, queen e7, bishop takes g6, and this would most likely have been a draw, and this would have been played under normal conditions. But Caruana had to win so that he had chances to win the tournament. But alas, he lost. Let's see how. c3, rook a c8, attacking c3. Rook c1, and now knight g6. Here, if white plays bishop takes e5 first, d takes e5, queen takes e5, trying to defend the c3 pawn like that. But now bishop takes a3, and this is even more pleasant for black because the black pawn on a7 is just gonna roll down the board. And on the other hand, this c pawn cannot really go down because of this two rooks which are blocking it. And this is slightly better for black, I would say. Rook c8, rook c1, and now knight g6. Black hops the knight away, attacking the bishop. And this prepares the trade of the dark square bishops, which is the most important theme in the Scheveningen. Because once they are swapped, the black knight will firmly stay on the outpost on e5 and it will remain there. And you can't really do anything to take away that knight. So something like bishop g4, trying to trade the good bishop for white in the Scheveningen would have been better. Or so maybe even bishop to b5, attacking the rook. But he played bishop d2. And now bishop h4. Queen e3. Rook to c5. c4. h6. Slow and steady wins the race. Just so that there are no background threats or checkmates. And this is just a waiting move, seeing what white's plan is. Queen to b3, bishop to g5. Please trade the bishop. Bishop takes g5, h takes g5. And now you can see, without the dark square bishop, this knight will firmly occupy the e5 square. Queen to g3, queen to d8. And the queen is back to its starting square with doing two beautiful maneuvers. First of all, going to b8, then going to f8, and then coming back to d8. And now the idea is simply going to a5. Rook cd1, bishop takes d5, e takes d5, and now he is, I think, winning from a positional point of view because simply knight to f4. This knight occupies the f4 square, which is another very good square for the knight as the bishop cannot attack it. Queen to f2, rook 8 c7. Oh, sorry, rook 8 c7. Just defending the f7 square because white was threatening g3. So rook d4 was played, queen to e8, attacking the bishop on e2. Bishop to f3, rook takes e4. You finally take the pawn. And now d5 is a weakness which can be attacked. Rook takes e4, rook takes e4, queen takes a7. And though the material is equal after rook a4 and queen to f2, this is actually better for black, maybe even winning. Just to note that if white decides to be greedy and play something like queen to b6, wanting to win this d6 pawn, rook takes a3, queen takes d6, and now rook takes f3. And this is the only way which gains the win. Earlier that after g takes f3, queen e2, the queen comes into the game, and now queen g2 is threatened, and this is unstoppable. So, and if queen c7 transposes into the same thing where the queen takes d6, rook takes f3. So queen f2 was tried. But after rook takes a3, black is now a full pawn up with greater activity than white. h4, queen to e5, h5, queen takes g5, rook e1, rook to a8, bishop to e4, and rook to a2. Seems a very nice move, but in time trouble, black misses a detail. Because here, rook to b1 is played. And the last chance is connected to the weak back rank. Even though black had played h6, still the bishop is controlling the h7 square, so rook b8 is an actual threat. Just to note that this was the 40th move, so after rook a2, black did get the time to think, and after rook b1, he responded correctly with rook a8. Giri simply admits his mistake, and this is enough for a win. White does play rook to e1, trying to do repetition, but sadly Giri simply plays f5. Bishop to b1, king to f7, rook to e3, rook h8, king g1, knight takes g2. And all pieces are doing a part in this win. And this was a brilliant game from the Dutchman, as he inched closer to the victory of the candidates. But alas, he lost in the 13th round, which claimed that Nepomniachtchi had won because he had better tie breaks. That's it for me. Hope you liked the video. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.